I know. You don't want to say hi to the internet? Okay. Go play with your sister. Hi guys, we are live. Go ahead and let me know in the chat when you can hear me. I'm already kind of I'm seeing it glitch too. So I was having audio problems, but I think I fixed it. Okay, there. I am live. Perfect. And there is audio. All right. Turn the sound off. I'm going to hop over here. You can hear me. Oh, yeah. Hi, Daisy. The kitty doesn't want to say hi. Maybe the other one will come later. But they're kind of being hyper. I had to bring them in here because the kids are sleeping. Okay, but you can't meow the whole time or I'm going to send you into the living room. Okay? Go play with your sister. Hi guys. Happy September. We are going to dive into a bunch of stuff. Hopefully this sounds okay. I do have a fan running. It's so unbelievably hot in my house. I feel like I am melting. I don't know where you guys live, but it's very hot here in LA. We're going to dive in a whole bunch of places, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and jump into it. I have the chat over here on my phone. If you haven't already, grab your natal chart, a pen, a paper to jot down notes. Those of you who are Patreon members, you have access to, well, we're going to go look at it right now, so hold on. Error. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming, such as something lovely. Okay. By the way, Mercury is about to station retrograde, and I have a feeling he's going to make some appearances tonight. What does this mean, open widget? I don't even know. I'm not even going to do this, and I'm going to hope for the best. All right, guys, so this is our thumbnail. We're going to kind of cover all of this as we get in. I just want to really quick point out the images that I chose and why. Hey, you guys be nice. I don't think this is going to work with the cats. I'm going to have to probably have Eddie come and get them. You guys were so good earlier. Hold on a second. Sorry, guys. We just got 2 new kittens. Brother and sister, we adopted them like a week ago. Hey! You guys were supposed to... Okay. You're going to go in the living room and your daddy's going to come watch you. Come on. Go be good. Don't get into any trouble. Yeah, that wasn't going to work out for us, you guys. Hold on 1 second. I just have to text Eddie and tell him that I put the cats in the living room. So this is a prime example of Mercury retrograde shenanigans. Just little roadblocks and redirections and things that kind of get in the way of you being able to get a message out clearly. So I figured I would just get rid of the cats sooner rather than later. I thought they were going to lay down. All right, so what do we have here? This is a picture of the Super Galactic Center. If you've been following me for a while, you've probably heard me talk about this point. We'll be talking about it later. This is actually the first picture of a black hole that we ever got. We got it back in 2019, and it's of the super massive black hole M87. This is actually the second picture that we got of that black hole, or like an enhanced picture of the same picture that shows these kind of spirals in here. That is supposedly the magnetic field, the like spiraling magnetic field of that black hole. So this is the newer picture of M87. Real quick, before we continue on, I want to just kind of explain how space is laid out so you can kind of get an idea of where the supergalactic center is and why it is so important, because our sun aligns with it twice a year, and it aligns during the equinox points. In the northern hemisphere, for us, it aligns through conjunction at the fall equinox and through opposition at the spring equinox. So the sun is going to be aligning with this point this month, and it's the key energy in addition to the equinox, which is what's depicted here. This is the sun and the earth and the distribution of light versus darkness for our 4 main solar holidays, the summer solstice, the winter solstice, and our 2 equinox points, the peak of light, the peak of darkness, and our periods of balance. We're coming up to an equinox and an equinox. We'll touch on the difference in a second. And during that time, our sun also happens to align with the supergalactic center. So real quick, where is the supergalactic center, right? So I assume we all know that the Earth and okay, so from astrology's perspective, the sun revolves around the Earth, right? Because the sun moves throughout the zodiac, throughout the year. Astrology is Earth-centered. The center of a chart where all the crisscrossing lines are, that's actually the Earth, right? But in reality, the Earth and the other planets in our solar system, they revolve around our sun, right? And then the sun and the other fixed stars in the Milky Way galaxy, they all rotate around the galactic center, which is the center of our own galaxy. It's called Sagittarius A, and it falls at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. And that's the center point of the Milky Way. So then the Milky Way, the Andromeda galaxy, and a shit ton of other galaxies. I used to say 45 because that's what astronomers used to claim, but they have since discovered so many. It's in the hundreds. So there's hundreds, if not more, galaxies that all then rotate around another black hole. And that black hole is this. It's M87. It's the center point of what's known as the Virgo cluster, which is our super cluster. So we have our solar system, we have our galaxy, and then we have the super cluster that we are a member of. And M87 is the center of that super cluster. It actually falls at 2 degrees of Libra, right around the 0 degree Libra point of the equinox. And so that's what this is a picture of. Sometimes I just spend a lot of time considering what pictures symbolically I want to use on these thumbnails. And if I do not explain them to you guys now, I will forget. And then later I'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't even talk about the picture. So that's what we have here. This is of course depicting our equinox that we're going to be talking about. And this is just some chicks with some fire because, you know, we're at one of those high holidays and it's a peak time for ritual, particularly rituals around balance, around alchemy, around transmutation, around the entering into the dark half of the year. So these are all things we're going to touch on as we get into the video. So I'm not going to do it now. So let's dive in. All right. So those of you who are a Patreon member, you have access to a downloadable version of this PDF linked below the post on Patreon. It's much better resolution. Actually, I'm looking at this right now, and this is like the best resolution that it's ever actually come across on these slides. Pretty good. So those of you who aren't Patreon members, feel free to screenshot this if you want to reference this throughout the month. This is all of the month's transits, whether it be like traditional astrology or more of those more hidden galactic, asteroid, fixed star alignments that, you know, are my particular jam. Real quick, I'm going to tell you about the color code over here, but before I do, I have to like do this whole spiel or I will forget. please make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. If you are interested in joining Patreon, we're actually going to be meeting tomorrow to discuss the Pisces full moon, which is a really, really actually beautifully mystical, illuminating full moon. It's actually quite nice. We're going to be meeting tomorrow night to discuss the Pisces moon, and my Patreon is a sliding scale, so you can pretty much pay whatever you want. All of the tiers have access to all of the videos, and the link to join is down below. You can pay as little as $3 a month and get access to all of the stuff that I do. And then I am currently booking clients for October, but I am full for September. So if you do book between now and the first week of October, obviously, you know, your session will be in October, and I'll go ahead and let you guys know when my October books are full. Okay, so real quick, let's just touch on the color code. Some of you might be familiar with what is going on here, and some of you might be like, what the hell is going on here? I have a little key to the madness over here with the color codes. So anything that's green on here, I call like the otherworldly transits. You know, the month started off with the sun conjunct Draco, the main star in the dragon. On the 2nd, Atlantis, the asteroid Atlantis, transited the galactic center. You know, things like that. Asteroids, black holes, major fixed star conjunctions with the sun or planets or whatnot, those are going to be green. The yellow ones, except for like this whole week of yellow, that's something else. I'm going to tell you what that is in a second. The yellow ones are, you know, important transits, but maybe not like super important. You know, they're important. Obviously, everything on here I wrote is pretty important. But, you know, they're not like a planet changing signs or a planet station retrograde or like harsh squares or conjunctions. They're like, you know, today the sun is trining the north node. You know, the sun, our vitality, our consciousness is working harmoniously with our new path we're trucking forward. And so we're being able to kind of maybe see a little bit more of that story and having some sort of like harmony and ease flow into our reality when it comes to building said story. But you know, it's not super, what's the word I'm looking for? Triggering. It's not what I call here the extra important transits, which are the black ones, right? Mercury stationing retrograde, Venus entering Virgo, you know, Mercury retrograde opposite Jupiter retrograde, the sun entering Libra, like big things like that. Those are the black ones. Our pink ones are, of course, our live streams over here on YouTube or over on Patreon. We're meeting today to discuss the week of September. I try to do it earlier, you guys, but you know, my chart is, I can't even express how much is happening in my own natal chart right now and my own life. That, yeah, we're doing it on the 7th. This is as soon as I could make it here. Tomorrow we meet to discuss the Pisces full moon, which is on the 10th. These light blue ones, those are the actual moons, right? So we'll be meeting to discuss the moon on the 8th, but the Pisces full moon is on the 10th. Our other moon this month is on the 25th. It's a Libra new moon. It's actually conjunct the super galactic center. It's going to be a big one. So if you join Patreon, you'll have access to both of these moon videos where we're going to be diving in. We're going to be diving in deep. The darker blue ones with the white writing that you see at the bottom of all the boxes throughout the month is something that I have been doing over here for quite a while now. And this was my way to kind of rectify the war that is going on in the astrological realm between, you know, tropical astrology, which is rooted in the seasons and anchored into those equinox points and those solstice points and those cardinal points, and really the signs take on a lot of energy. The archetypal energy of the signs take on a lot of energy of the seasons they have been in, right? And yes, the stars have shifted, but the seasons and the tropical astrology is speaks very strongly to my soul. I mean, it helps that my North Node is literally at 0 degrees of Aries, the start of the tropical zodiac, so I know I'm supposed to stay here. But I think part of my mission in the 8th house of astrology and the occult, opposite my sun and my Atlantis placement and the Super Galactic Center. So I know I was supposed to kind of like merge the sidereal system and the tropical system together. And the cultures, like the Hindus, the Vedic tradition, and other Oriental or Eastern systems that are rooted in a sidereal chart are much more lunar based, and they pay much more attention to the moon. While the sun has a lot to do with our seasons. Obviously, the solstice and the equinox points are determined between how much sun we are getting, you know? And so what we have here is kind of a composite between the sun and our planetary archons moving throughout a tropical year, and the moon moving throughout a sidereal month. So the blue words at the bottom of every square is the moon's transit throughout the month. So throughout every single month, the moon makes contact with the entire zodiac, and it stations at all of the key fixed stars. It aligns with all of the asteroids. It aligns with all of the black holes. It goes all the way around. And so what this is following the moon throughout the month and in alignment with exact fixed stars, so the sidereal system, including that of the ancient anchor points for the equinox and the solstice points, these watchers, right? The 4 royal fixed stars, the Persian stars, Regulus and Aldebaran and Antares and Fomalhaut, the ones that harnessed the, or that marked the fixed signs of the zodiac, which actually used to be the cardinal signs of the zodiac, but now are the fixed stars of the zodiac. And actually those stars have moved into the mutable signs. So anyway, this is my way of trying to composite together systems that are not complete in themselves and trying to make something that I feel is the most complete thing I've seen, which is just really trying to welcome everything and exclude nothing. But I mean, like, you can't welcome everything. There's thousands of asteroids. I just work with the archetypes that speak to me at the moment. But yeah, that's what the blue ones are. The red ones are like important, very, very important dates. Like, you know, the equinox, which is on the 22nd at 6:03 p.m., or my birthday, which is on the 29th, which is the most important day of this entire month. So you guys make sure you celebrate it. Just kidding. And then the gray ones, we don't normally have these, but I just put them here for certain signifiers. You know, we're going to be talking about Mabon, which is one of the 8 solar high holidays that are rooted in the wheel of the year. You know, we have our equinox points, we have our solstice points, and then we have 4 other points that are the midway points. You know, we have Samhain during Halloween, we have Beltane, we have Lammas, and Mabon is the one associated with the equinox. And as you can see, okay, well, here, I guess we'll just do it here. As you can see, so most people kind of just they usually tie it to September 21st. But this year, the equinox is on the 22nd. They usually tie it to the equinox date and have it be a single date. But Mabon is actually an entire, I think like 8-day celebration. And on this year, 2020, it starts on September 21st and it ends on September 29th. It always ends on my birthday. So yeah, it's just a little bit longer. And that's what the yellow is. It's this week-long celebration, and during this week we have all of the key activations of the month. We have Mercury retrograde conjuncting the supergalactic center. We have the equinox. We have the sun conjuncting the supergalactic center. We have the equinox, which we're going to talk about here in a second. It's a big week. So this is really the biggest week of like activations when it comes to balance, when it comes to alchemy, when it comes to initiations, because it's cardinal energy. It's an exciting month. Okay, I'm going to check in with the chat really quick. And then we're going to go through this whole chart when we get into the chart. Oh, Leslie's just saying hi. Hi, Leslie. Okay. So not only do I try to compile this lunar sidereal month with a solar tropical year here, merging together those two systems like the Libra soul that I am. But I also like to try to connect our two hemispheres. So the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, and take into account the polarity that is activated. So I'm sure you guys have heard me say this a million times, but you're going to hear me say it a million more because it's, I feel like, the most important thing. You always hear me say, we do not have 12 signs of the zodiac. We have 6 axis of polarities that are seeking balance and harmony. And usually we see these axis of polarities highlighted at a full moon, right? When the sun is in one sign and the moon is in another sign, like we're going to have in Pisces here in a couple of days. Our sun will be in Virgo and the moon will be opposite it in Pisces, and it'll be activating one of these axis of polarities, seeking balance and integration, and some sort of compromise, and having some sort of like aha illumination moment, right? But we are constantly in a state of polarity, because whatever sign the sun is in, the earth is in the opposite sign. So I actually have a book here. This book is so old. Oh my gosh, what is this date on this? I think it's like from the 1800s. This is a very old astrology text called Earthology, and it's from the 1900. It's from the year 1900. And it breaks down your astrology into both your sun sign and your earth sign. So whatever your sun sign is, your earth sign is the exact opposite. So like my sun falls at 2 degrees or 5 degrees of Libra, which means my earth sign is 5 degrees of Aries. So that's what we can see depicted here. This is the month of September. We have the sun here in the sign of Virgo. It will be moving into the sign of Libra later in the month. These are actually the constellations that the southern hemisphere can see right now. So I know I have a lot of Patreon members from Australia. So it's actually pretty interesting, because for those of us in the northern hemisphere, we, at night when it's dark, we see these stars. So the sun is in Virgo, and because it's a Western system, it's a northern hemisphere Western system. And the earth is in Pisces. It will be moving into Aries. And these are the stars that we can see in our night sky. While the southern hemisphere can see these stars in their night sky. And so I've been starting to incorporate not only, the astrological season, we're going to talk about that, of course, but also what we can actually see with our eyes. And I've done this because I'm convinced that astrology by nature is like an elitist type science, especially in the past. It was, dedicated for the priestly class, the kingly class, the certain sects of society, while the vast majority of our ancestors, they didn't not have a connection to the stars. They of course did, but they had a connection to the stars that they could see at the time that they could look up. So the stars that our ancestors were telling stories about during this time of the year are the stars that they could see. They are the stars in our night sky, and they are just as important as the stars that we can't see. Now, for those of you down under, it's flipped, which is pretty interesting. You can look up and see the astrology that is actually a little bit different for you guys. I really think that the Southern Hemisphere needs their own system. I feel like we need to find some really good Australian astrologers to try to figure out how to accommodate the difference in energy between the flip of the seasons, but I'm not the person to do that. Okay, so what do we have here? This is what we can see. This is where our sun is. These are some of the things that are easy to see in the night sky. And this is a little bit about them. So Capricorn, obviously we know about Capricorn. I'm not going to read this. Capricorn is one of the constellations we can see in the night sky. But what I do want to lean into are these two constellations. The first being Cygnus. So I recently, let me just read this really quick. So Cygnus is the swan constellation. It's a swan pointing down and diving down. It actually flies down the Milky Way. Its head and neck outstretched, its wings outspread. Cygnus represents Orpheus, the musician, in one legend, placed in the sky to be near his magic harp, his lyra. But in another legend, the swan is the form of Jupiter, assumed so that he could visit his beloved Leda without being recognized by his jealous wife, Juno. And it goes on to speak a little bit more. If you guys want to take a screenshot, you can read it. So obviously this is rooted in Greek mythology. It's probably rooted in Orpheus because it is diving down, and Orpheus's mythology is about a trip to the underworld with his lyra, and a dive down. So I recently posted this video over on Discord. If you guys join Patreon, you get access to this Discord. I have no idea how to pronounce this YouTube guy's name, but he is a expert in Indo-European mythology. And this video, he talks about the oldest creation myth, and he rooted in the Indo-European mindset, right? And he goes back very far. By the way, these are all the different things we have over here. If you guys want to come over to Discord, over to Patreon, we have like all these different tabs on all these different subjects, and you can come and hang out and chat with us. But anyway, look this up online and watch this video, because in this video he talks about the oldest creation myth being that of the, what did he call it, the earth diver, and it being a bird, but the type of bird like a swan that can both kind of fly and dive into the ocean. And how some of the oldest creation myths are about this sort of diving bird diving down into the depths of the ocean to retrieve something like a rock or something, and then bringing it back up, and that being how like the earth and like humanity and everything was created, was from this diving bird. You also see how this kind of looks like the cross, and so it has a Christian connotation as well. Cygnus is a really interesting star system. It has one of the biggest black hole. It has the biggest black hole in our entire universe, housed, that we know of, housed within its constellation. And it's believed by astroarchaeologists that Göbekli Tepe, this very ancient lost civilization that was buried over 12,000 years ago in Turkey, during the time that it was a thriving civilization, that it actually aligned with the stars of Cygnus, and all over the pillars that are supposedly aligned with stars of Cygnus. I have no way of confirming that, but that's what they claim. But but there's birds carved all over these. And so up in our sky right now, being illuminated is this constellation that, according to mythology, is strongly rooted in this ancient creation myth, and ancient lost cultures. So, I like to do a lot of stargazing. I really think that just going outside and looking at the sky does something to you, and it connects you to the vast mystery. And I think that's why we have so much light pollution too, because they're trying to sever that connection. And then we have the eagle. This eagle flies along the Milky Way towards Cygnus. It's the eagle that Jupiter or Zeus changed himself into to take Ganymede, this Trojan lad, it says, but he was a child, like a literal child, to be his cupbearer. So to be his sex slave and pourer of immortality juice. Let's be real. That's what he was. And they say that is the more modern, and Plato says this whole myth was bullshit, and that they made it up just to give credence to some of their taboo interests. But this is a more newer Greek myth that is tied to Aquarius. So Ganymede, the cup bearer, is said to be the water bearer of Aquarius, right? And this is the eagle that supposedly kidnaps him, ultimately. Like, kidnaps him and takes him for hostage. And it's Zeus, right? So the eagle, to me, it represents the opposite side of the serpent, right? The eagle is very much that, like, patriarchal stream of consciousness that we see throughout our culture thus far. Robert Steffer has a really good video where he breaks down the eagle and serpent dynamic that has played out across time, and I recommend checking out that video as well. But I'm not gonna touch any more on this. This is from the book Northern Star to the Southern Cross. Okay, so we talked about Mabon. Okay, so let's touch on the difference between the equinox and the equinox, because they're actually two different things and they happen on two different dates. And just like the Sirius alignment, the equinox is a personal event that is dependent on your latitude. And don't worry, I got the charts so we can be accurate and exact over here. And it was very hard to find this chart, so you're welcome. I actually couldn't find it this year. I had to go back and get it on my old slides. So I have dove much deeper into this whole thing in previous videos. If you want to know more about this, I would go back and watch my March video from 6 months ago for the spring equinox. I actually linked that one down below. You can watch me explain highly technical stuff where I'm going to touch on it a little bit here with a globe, and then I like drop the globe and it like flies across the room. It's a hot mess, but we crack some codes in that video. That's linked below. Or my September video from last year, I dove into this then too. Okay, so everybody knows about the equinox, right? It's supposedly, and you'll see the posts, the equinox, the moment of exact 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness is here. It's the moment of balance. And the equinox is actually determined by the moment that the, you know what, I am actually just going to go here since I really need to show you on this. So in that video from March, I dive so deep into all these technicalities that we're not going to get into here. So I recommend watching it. But I want to just show you this one picture right here. Okay, so the equinox is determined by the moment that the sun crosses this plane. So this is the point for the spring equinox. The fall equinox is on the other side of Earth. This is actually where the prime meridian or the equatorial meridian runs through, and that's this way. The equator of Earth runs through. And then also, this is the equator right here. This line that is like the middle of the Earth. This is the equator. This is the ecliptic, the astrological ecliptic, so our signs. And then this is the prime meridian. And I dove all into how there's a lot of like suspicious things and like all kinds of stuff in the video link below, so I recommend checking it out. I'm going to try to maybe like turn it into like a short clip, like maybe take a clip and turn it in because I dove all into this. But the equinox is determined by the moment that the sun crosses the equator, right? While the equinox is actually the period where we have that exact balance. So real quick, I'm just going to read this. For this year, for 2022, the equinox falls on September 22nd. It's actually exact at 6:03 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can look this up for your location, or you can go to time and like you can just type in 2022 equinox, and Google knows your location, or equinox time, write the word time. Google knows your location and it will give you the time. Or you can go to the time and date website and put in your location and it will give you the exact time too. Or you can just take this time and put it to your time zone and it will be correct. The word equinox is derived from the Latin word this long thing here, which comes from the word meaning equal and nox, which means night. On the day of the equinox, daytime and nighttime are of approximately equal duration all over the planet. This date happens twice a year when the sun crosses the celestial equator. So about September 22nd and about March 20th. That's when we have our equinox points. So it's actually when the sun crosses the point where, like I said before, the ecliptic, so the zodiac, meets the earthly equator and the prime meridian, which is actually on this side of the earth called the equinoctial color, which is the meridian or the great circle of the celestial sphere, which passes through the celestial poles and the two equinox points, being Aries and Libra. So it's that like mathematical exact point, right? And this happens at the same time for everybody on Earth. But the equinox, the actual moment of balance is dependent on your latitude. And nobody talks about the equinox. My old mentor, Rick Levine, he's the one who taught me about this. And I was like, why have I never known about this? But when you Google it, you can find stuff about it. Astronomers seem to know about it, but astrologers, they don't know. You guys know me. I like my details. Okay. My Virgo placements. So the equinox, it depends on your latitude. See the next slide. We'll get there in a second. Equinox means equal light in Latin. Equinox and equinox are similar but not interchangeable. Equinox is the day when we get the actual equal day and night, which means the sun sets for 12 hours and then it's up with at least part of it above the horizon for 12 hours, that 12-12 balance. The equinox is usually a few days before or after the equinox based on latitude. So it's actually a few days before the spring equinox and a few days after the fall equinox. And then these are some other dates to just pay attention to this month. The sun aligns with the super galactic center on the 25th. The exact time is 4:04 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And actually on the 21st, the first day of Mabon, Mercury retrograde aligns with the super galactic center. So really from the 21st to the 29th, like we're lit up. We're just like, we're galactically lit up. Cosmically, we're like plugged into the center point of our vast cosmic logos. Our sun, our closer logos, is aligned with that vast cosmic mind. And then we're also at this like period of balance between extremes, between day, between night, between light, between dark, between the polarities within us that are constantly pulling us in separate directions, we have this period where we are whole. And this is the week to really look out for. Okay, so this is where you find your latitude, okay? So what we have here are the dates of the equilux for both the March equinox, the March equilux and the September equilux. So I live in LA. I live a little bit outside of LA, thank God, because LA itself is a freaking nightmare. But I live on the 33rd degree parallel. So if you look on the calendar, you'll see I wrote on the 26th and on the 27th in gray for LA. These are our equilux. If you happen to live on 33 degrees northern latitude, which runs all the way around the world. So if you live in Phoenix, you live there as well. If you live in lots of places, you live on the 33rd. So if you do not know your latitude, you can Google the city you live in and the word lat and long, and it will pop up. Or you can look on your natal chart. It's usually there up in the corner. I know that I live on the 33rd because it's a rabbit hole in and of itself, and I've been in it for a long time. So it falls kind of here, you know? It's like not exactly the 27th and not exactly the 26th. So I would say maybe the evening of the 26th for me is really that period of balance between light and dark. Sunset on the 26th is what I would say is my equilux. Maybe sunset on the 26th and sunrise on the 27th, that sort of time frame. So you want to look and see what your latitude is, whether, you know, if you're at 45 degrees northern latitude, for you it's going to be on the 25th. Yeah, so take a screenshot. You can reference this later. This is from timeanddate.com. But this is the period of that actual balance. But, you know, the equinox itself is also a significant moment when the sun transits over that point of all those lines crossing. So both days are significant, both days are important, and I think both days should be incorporated into your ritual. Now, if you happen to live on the equator, even though the sun is crossing the equator at this moment, the equator at the equinox, the equator, because of the way the light manifests there, they actually don't have an equal lux. They don't have a day that would be considered an equal balance of light and darkness. So that's interesting to note if you happen to live on the equator, which I'm willing to bet you probably don't. Okay, so let's dive into the chart here. Oh, wait. No, I wanted to do something here. Okay, so I have dove into the equinox and like what is actually happening and like the technicalities with the sun and megalithic structures and all kinds of things in previous videos. What I want to do here right now is I want to really quick touch on the mythology and the archetypal expression of Mabon and the ritual tied to this time by our ancestors, particularly that of Celtic origin. So I'm going to go ahead and read from a book. I wasn't planning on even diving into Mabon at all, but I hold on, where is this so I can see you guys? I recently picked up this book from Tavis, and then like last second I was like, oh, I wonder what it says in there about Mabon, and then I read it and it was really good, so we're gonna read it. So the book is Celebrate the Earth, a year of holidays in the pagan tradition, and it talks about every single one of those 8 high holidays, which I literally, like everybody I know is born on one of those. So my birthday's on the last day of Mabon. Eddie's birthday is the summer solstice. My daughter's birthday is Lammas. My dad's birthday is Beltane. My sister's birthday is Samhain. I have somebody on every single one, except for one. So we are going to really quick, we're just going to read, not this whole thing, but some of this, so we get a kind of idea of how the ancients viewed this time and this period of ritual. Oh, Melly, thank you so much. She says Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Friday the 23rd September at 11:03 a.m. is the equinox. And for you guys, it's actually the spring equinox. So and for you, it's not Mabon. It's actually, what is it? Ostra. So, well, it's the spring equinox for you guys. So you guys are entering into spring. You're entering into the light half of the year. And we are entering into the dark half of the year. So it is flip-flopped for you guys. You're having this rebirth of the self, and we're going into this period of deconstruction and the sort of the other world, the realm of the goddess, right? And you're entering the realm of the god. Okay, so Mabon, also known as the autumn, and I would like to make a disclaimer to apologize to all my ancestors and every culture whose language I am about to butcher. I think it's just the Celts. It's like Welsh too, but I think it's just the Celts. But I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but your language is so hard. I'm very sorry. Please, I know you guys are going to roll in your grave, but I'm going to try my best. Okay, so it's usually around September 22nd, and this year it's on the 22nd. So as humans, I believe we are tied by a bond of empathy with the destiny of our planet Earth. Whether we consciously choose to acknowledge the bond from the point of view of our daily lives matters little to our spiritual, emotional, and biological selves, who must act in accordance with an inner necessity. These essential impulses are commanded, of course, by the eternal ebb and flow of life, the cosmic laws and harmonies that return us to Earth's beginnings. During the September equinox, when the sun passes our planet's equator, making day and night of almost equal length all around the world, I feel, in a passionate sense, the extraordinary relationship between humankind and these primordial movements, patterns, and tides. The influence of so gentle a turn in the Earth's axis, a poetic motion established long before the existence of time, is profound. This book was written in 1987, the year I was born too, which I thought was pretty cool. Okay, the story of Mabon. At this point on the wheel of the year, I choose to celebrate the universal story of Mabon, which has been passed down to us from the ancient Proto-Celtic oral tradition. Mabon ap Modron, meaning son or son of the mother, is the young son, divine youth, or as I prefer to call him, son of light. Just as the September equinox marks a significant time of change, so too does the birth of Mabon. Modron is his mother, the great goddess, guardian of the other world, protector and healer. She is Earth herself. From the moment of the September equinox, the sun's strength diminishes until the moment of the winter solstice in December, when the sun begins to slowly grow stronger, and the days once again after the following equinox, which they forgot to mention here, after the following equinox, the days will become longer than the nights. Mabon also disappears, taken at birth when only 3 nights old. His mother is sweet, and though his whereabouts are veiled in mystery, Mabon is eventually freed with the help of the wisdom and memory of the most ancient of living animals. The blackbird, the stag, the eagle, which we see up in the sky right now, and the salmon. His seeker asks the ritual question of each of the animal totems. Quote, "Tell me if thou knowest aught of Mabon, the son of Modron, who was taken when 3 nights old from between his mother and the wall." All along, however, Mabon has been dwelling, a happy captive, in Modron's magical other world, Modron's womb. It is a nurturing and enchanting place, but also one filled with challenges. Only in such powerful a place of renewal can Mabon be reborn as his mother's champion, the source of joy and the son of light. Mabon's light has been drawn into the earth, gathering strength and wisdom enough to become a new seed. To understand the themes of Mabon's story is to accept the reality and significance of an archetypal world. The archetypes of Mabon and Modron are first forms or first models that allow us to consider information not strictly measurable by machines or the physical senses. They transcend the boundaries of convention and can travel as the entire pantheon of gods and goddesses travels between the worlds. Witches, like the Celts, who also practice witchcraft, have a deeply held sense of coexistence, of multiple time dimensions. There are many cycles of time, and many of these cycles overlap. We believe in our history, but we also believe in the presence of truth outside of time. The story of Mabon and Modron, because of its archetypal, echoes through all ages and is for all beings of all religions in all worlds. There are many Mabons and many Modrons. The Greek god Apollo shares many of Mabon's characteristics. Mabon's Gaulish title as Maponus. Mabon was celebrated along Hadrian's Wall, and there is new evidence that he was honored long before the arrival of the Vikings in North America. Although much was changed, aspects of Mabon and Modron are found in later Jewish and Christian religions. Each of our cultural identities comes from how we interpret and position ourselves in these narratives of the past. During the September equinox, this dramatic movement of cosmic balance as well as change, I honor Mabon and the great goddess, his mother, Modron, in ritual. And then it goes on to like all these different ways to do rituals, like what to wear and eat and cook, all different kinds of ideas. I just want to kind of real quick read you guys some herbs and some crystals, like some practical stuff. A lot of the stuff it's like bake a feast. Like I don't have time to like cook a freaking giant feast. But I can use some herbs and some crystals. Okay, what do you guys think? Melly says, I always flip-flop here. It's why they call us down under. Bye, Leslie. Okay, so some herbs associated with Mabon that you guys can use this month. Rue, yarrow, rosemary, marigold, sage, chamomile, passion flower, frankincense, rose hips, sunflower, and dried apple. They said oils can be like almond oil, hazelnut oil, and they go into why and why it was used around this time. I'm not going to read all of that. Okay, stones. And they go into why too, but I'm also not going to read all of that. But clear quartz, amber is associated with the light, so that makes sense. Peridot, diamond, citrine, cat's eye, and aventurine. And then they have like spells and all kinds of stuff. The book's pretty cool. Okay, so let's get back into the stuff. I just wanted to read that so we could get a little bit of idea of what is normally celebrated around this time of year. It's the light and the darkness that birthed it, ultimately. Okay, so let's dive into the chart. which is where I guess I probably should have gone instead of there. Okay, so I don't know how much of this we are going to cover. I'm just going to kind of jump around to some, key important dates and try to go along the calendar. You guys feel free to take notes on the calendar or whatever. What time is it? I can't see the time. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. Okay. All right. So today, as we meet, it's September 7th. This chart is currently set to September 1st. I just want to kind of point out a couple of things that happened leading up to here. So the month started with the Sun conjunct Draco. It ends with some Draco serpentine energy as well. It starts with the Moon transiting over Serpens as well. Serpens is the serpent in the grasp of Ophiuchus, the man trying to integrate the serpent in order to ultimately unlock the Galactic Center. And I have a whole video where I went over this. It's here on YouTube. So the Moon in the beginning of the month is transiting over Serpens, while the Sun is transiting over Draco, the two serpentine constellations. The month ends with something similar as well. That's why on the thumbnail I wrote the return of the serpent, because not only do we have these strong serpentine fixed star conjunctions happening, but we're entering into the dark half of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere, which is the realm of the goddess, which is in turn the realm of the serpent, of the unconscious, of the primordial. We're actually going to be reading a book on the 14th for the next episode of Books and Buds. It is called The Sign of the Serpent, The Key to Creative Physics. This book is apparently really rare. And it runs well over $200, and it's hard to find. I have already read it. It's fabulous. I thought I was going to disagree with a lot of what was in this book. I thought it was going to be written more from this scientific materialist mindset with like a metaphysical twist, but that's not what it was at all. It was actually more like my mindset, which is, I like science. I was into science way before I was into metaphysics. I majored in psychology. I didn't believe in any of the woo-woo stuff, and I actually really do like science and physics and astronomy and all of these things that are incomplete in and of themselves. And I like to mix them in with my metaphysical work as well. That's why we're talking about black holes and whatnot. And it seems like this guy does a similar thing where he's covering many bases, and we're going to touch on, the symbolism of the serpent, of the life force, of electromagnetic energy. We're going to touch on so many different things. This book does a fabulous job, but we're going to read it until we're done with it. And I'm a big fan. I'm a really big fan of how he kind of combined the sort of like left brain, right brain lens into a cohesive understanding of the realm we live in. And the book was written in I think the late 80s or very early 90s, 1990. So it's, you would think it would be dated because we've discovered so much about the realm of physics since then, but it's not. This guy was way ahead of his time, and it's brilliant. So anyway, we're going to dive into that on the 14th, and it's perfect. I was already planning on diving into it without even really knowing that this month is really sandwiched between a bunch of serpentine energy, which bubbles up a lot from the unconscious, from the shadow, but it's also a lot of untapped potential, untapped magic, that primordial essence, that kundalini life force energy that runs through everyone and everything. Okay, so on the 2nd, Atlantis transited over the Galactic Center for the 3rd and final time. So Atlantis has been retrograde. It stationed retrograde back in May, and it kind of like danced over this area of the sky, and it transited over the galactic center 3 times because of retrograde. This is the 3rd and final time. So perhaps look and see what area of your life Sagittarius rules. What house is Sagittarius for you? Because that's where this has kind of been happening. And this sort of like Atlantean archetypal energy, which is always going to be deeply karmic, because we all have so much karma tied to the past, but also deeply enlightening, and this ability to kind of reclaim knowledge that the soul already learned in past initiations. And so we could really access this through leaning into whatever area this was. And so the beginning of the month was really this last sort of pass over this galactic mind. And so if you had any sort of like weird Atlantean sinks or whatnot come through, like this is why, you know? And then looking to see what area of your life that is will really help you to see where this sort of Atlantean lesson that's been really playing out strongly since May is coming to a culmination point. For me, this is my 4th house of home, early life trauma, the mother, and trust and believe I think I figured now I know. Over the last couple of days it became pretty clear. I was like, oh, okay, that's what that was. All right. But the second was really that pass. That same day, Mercury, the planet of the mind, the planet of communication, the planet of our thinking processes, the messenger, that who gives the message so we can understand it, was in opposition to Jupiter retrograde. And prepping to go retrograde itself. Mercury is going to be doing a little retrograde here over the super galactic center. So we just had Atlantis over the galactic center. Now we're about to have Mercury over the super galactic center. And on the 2nd, right as we were having Atlantis come to this culmination of the galactic center, Mercury was in opposition to Jupiter retrograde. Really highlighting this polarity of the self and this like overhaul that's happening in the realm of the self, because we have a shit ton of things retrograde right now in Aries. So Aries governs the self. It governs our identity, our vitality, our individuality, our driving forces, our like lower animalistic energies, you know, that sort of like selfish me first mindset, right? That many times we need to survive. Aries literally governs surviving. And right now we have Jupiter, the planet of growth, and our belief systems retrograde. So we're doing a bunch of internal growth while reassessing our entire belief systems, often rooted in dogma, like Jupiter always is. Dogma and higher thought, academia, philosophical ideologies. These things are all being reassessed right now, and this Mercury opposition on the 2nd was really showing us a lot of that. We also have Chiron retrograde in that same sign, really going inward to alchemize a lot of the wounds that have been dug up during this during this Chiron transit through Aries. And this is where we can really solidify a lot of that healing and the unlocking of the wisdom that they hold. It's happening right on top of the asteroid Sphinx, which is also retrograde. The asteroid Sphinx represents like an illusion or a riddle or a paradox. It represents this like enigma, this mystery, this guardian of the mysteries, this guardian of the Akash, this sort of test or initiation that you have to pass in order to get what's on the other side, whatever it may be. And it's part of this narrative as well. And then we also have Eris in that sign, retrograde as well. Eris, the planet of feminine chaos and primordial discord, rage and change, is also retrograde in the sign of the self. And so it's really bubbling up a lot of this like angst from the recesses of our primal animalistic psyche that Aries governs, right? And we also have this happening the same time as we have these sort of serpentine energies bubbling up from the like vaster realm, whether it be the fixed stars. Well, I mean, they are fixed stars. They're both fixed stars. The moon that day is conjunct Serpens, the serpent in Ophiuchus, and the sun is conjunct Alpha Draconis, the main star in Draco, the dragon that guards the celestial pole. It guards what we're on our way towards. It is our quest between us and the Holy Grail. It is that which we must integrate in order to become whole and unlock the galactic center within. You know, for those of you who haven't seen the Ophiuchus video, Ophiuchus is sometimes known as the 13th sign. I go into in detail in the video why I don't think he should be split up and why 13 is a prime divine number and all of this jazz. But he is the serpent bearer, integrating the serpent. He is standing with his foot on the galactic center, and him and the serpent together are reaching for the corona borealis, the crown. They are crowning themselves while simultaneously opening the center of our galaxy. The Axis Mundi, which is another video I really hope you guys have watched. For context, it's here available on YouTube. But it's this sort of polar pillar, this world tree, this Axis Mundi, these two extremes, you know, the roots of the tree in hell, the branches in heaven, but then this alchemy that happens in the middle. And right now we are in a month of alchemy where so much can be done in the middle, so much merging and transmuting and integrating. And a lot of it is going to be done on an internal basis because of this retrograde extravaganza. So real quick, let's just talk about what is retrograde this month, okay? Mercury stations retrograde on the 9th. Jupiter is retrograde. Chiron is retrograde. The Sphinx asteroid is retrograde. Eris is retrograde. The nodes are always retrograde. The nodes, the eclipse points, they always move in a retrograde fashion, as do the stars. The stars are always moving in a retrograde fashion. I talked in my last video about how perhaps the retrograde energy is our true energy. Perhaps that's why retrogrades are so demonized, is because that is when we are really aligned with the divine. The eclipses move in a retrograde fashion. That's when the polarities are working as one. The sun and moon are on equal footing. They're aligned. The portal is open. And the stars, the great year, the 26,000 precessional cycle, the stars move 1 degree every 72 years in a backwards fashion, and it takes 26,000 years for them to go all the way around. So the zodiac moves that way, our eclipses move that way, and the planets, everyone but the sun and moon, which never go retrograde, at some point move that way. And things feel off kilter, but it's because it forces us to go inward. It forces us to reassess, reconfigure, restructure, redo, because we missed something and we're trying to integrate something very important. Retrogrades always focus over a specific area of the sky, and they really want us to lean in and get the message. And so it's definitely going to be a lot of alchemy, but deep internal alchemy within the self, which is sometimes hard to do during Libra season when we're in the realm of the other. But others are very much going to be our mirror throughout this time. Okay, so retrograde extravaganza. Okay, so on the 4th, Venus entered Virgo. So we still haven't made it to today, but I want to kind of cover where we're kind of at. I didn't do a video last month. So on the 4th, Venus, I'm on the 5th because it's a different time. Venus entered Virgo. So Venus is the planet of finances. It's the planet of values. It's the planet of relationships, of beauty, of art. And it has moved into the very practical, grounded sign of Virgo. And so maybe we are paying more attention when it comes to practicality and being of service to those close to us. Virgo also governs service. The details, organization, our duties, our responsibilities, these are all things governed by Virgo. Virgo wants to be of service, but she wants to be of service in practical, tangible, logical ways. And while the Sun and Venus are both transiting through this sign, this practical, tangible, logical lens is going to be focused on our relationships, our values, our finances, things that need to get in order when it comes to that realm. Also looking to see what house does this fall in for you. For me, this is my first house. I'm a Virgo rising. So this is really also manifesting in my area of the self, of identity, of vitality. But for you, this could be really playing out very much so in your relationships, if it's in your 7th house, or it could be your 10th house of career. For all of us, it's going to be someplace different. So that's why you really want to have your chart with you. You want to have the Astrologer's Apprentice cheat sheet, so you can kind of, follow along and see how this is actually playing out for you. But on that same day, the moon transited the Galactic Center and Atlantis as well. So it really mirrored back to our subconscious a lot of what was happening here since May, the whole Atlantis retrograde, really mirroring it into our subconscious and our intuitive senses. So if things came through around the 4th as well, this perhaps could be where it was coming from. Okay. So we are finally got to today. Okay, so the only thing I want to touch on today is that the Sun was in a trine to the North Node. So the Sun here at 14 degrees of Virgo was trining. So these are mean nodes, not true nodes. I need to figure out how to change my node calculation. So it is off my nodes are off by a couple of degrees. But the Sun trined the true node today. So we've been having a sort of huge shift play out in the areas of our life that are governed by Taurus and Scorpio over this past eclipse seasons. We're about halfway through an eclipse story right now. Halfway through an 18-month shift in these areas. Really want to look and see where these houses are. And, we're coming up on another eclipse season in October, and the Sun, that which we can see, our vitality, our consciousness, our egoic will, our light, came into a trine with the North Node. Also, it's Uranus too. The Uranus trine is exact. I don't know if it's exact. Oh, on the 11th. So a week later. And so it really helped us to kind of see and perhaps push forward in this direction, in whatever it is that's unfolding in these areas of our life. So look to see what house. That's where you're really going to understand. But Taurus has a lot to do with finances, with structures, with stability, with longevity, with hard work, with our resources, being able to support ourselves, being able to have a sort of foundation to build anything else upon. Uranus is really shaking up this area of our life, forcing us to take a new path forward that's more aligned with our fate and our destiny. And the eclipses are coming through to really kind of set us on that track. But this Sun alignment that's exact today was really helping us to kind of like see. So if you got any sort of insight, if you got any sort of news, if you were led in a sort of direction, if some sort of like a harmonious energy came into your reality today, it could be helping to helping you to step more fully into this new North Node path that we all are trekking in some area of our life. The Sun is also sextile the South Node today. It's not an as harmonious aspect as a trine, but it's still harmonious, and it's working nicely, but it requires more effort to get the benefit with the South Node, which is in Scorpio, which is really digging up a lot of karmic debris from the area that houses all of our karmic debris, all of our shadowy, hidden, taboo, repressed consciousness. Not so much the collective unconscious and all of the archetypal realm that is Pisces, but this is where a lot of like projections and unconscious impulses and addictions and things like that kind of manifest. And so a lot of things can be bubbling up in order to work through. This is also the realm of the mysteries, of the occult. And so we're simultaneously working through what's standing in the way of us accessing deeper esoteric truths ultimately. And this was a harmonious aspect today. Okay. So tomorrow we're going to dive into the Pisces moon over on YouTube, so come and join us. On the 9th, Mercury stations retrograde. So really quick, I want to talk about some of these retrograde dates here. Okay, so Mercury will station retrograde on the 9th at 8 degrees of Libra. It actually started what's called its pre-shadow back on August 22nd. So what that means is Mercury is going to transit this area of the sky. It's going to station retrograde like it did it will station retrograde on the 9th. Then it's going to transit backwards over that same area of the sky. Then it's going to station direct and transit over it a third time. The first time it was going through while direct is what's known as the shadow period. It's transiting over for the first time an area of the sky. It's going to come back over 3 times. And so we missed something. We've missed something in the area of our life that Libra and Virgo govern, because this is where the retrograde is going to be. So think back. I mean, you're not really going to know what this is about until later. But if, in theory, you could think back to August, around August 22nd, which is when the pre-shadow started, that's when we really started trucking this area. And we missed something. And so looking at the themes of the past month or whatever, the past 2 weeks, can help you to kind of understand maybe where this retrograde is going to take you. So Mercury stations retrograde on the 9th. It is then at 8 degrees of Libra. It is then going to transit all the way back to 24 degrees of Virgo, and it's going to station direct on October 2nd. But it's post-retrograde shadow, meaning it's going to station direct here, and then it still has to transit all the way over for the third time. So really, we won't be out of the Mercury retrograde woods until October 16th. That is when we exit what's called the post-shadow period. And then after that, a lot of these other retrograde planets start to station direct. So we have Mercury stations direct on October 2nd, and then Pluto stations direct on October 8th. Saturn stations direct on October 22nd, but then Mars over here will station retrograde right around Halloween. We're having a really long Mars in Gemini transit. So we're still going to be feeling this sort of retrograde vibes for quite a while. I want to really quick just kind of point out the aspects that Mercury makes to planets during its retrograde. So hold on, let me do... Okay, So what we have here are the aspects highlighted to just Mercury. I'm using Solar Fire software. This software is really expensive, you guys. It's like $400. And it's also very complicated. But linked down below in my bio, I have my affiliate link for Luna Cloud software, which is, with that link, only $4.50 a month or $32 a year. And it's like a cloud program. You can make it an app on your phone, or you can use it on the server. And it does this same thing where it will isolate all of the aspects to each point, but it's way easier to do. You just have to click on the planet. So if you have the Luna program, which I know many of you have gotten already, if you want to isolate the aspects to a specific planet, just click on it. So just click on the chart and it'll show you what's being made to it. So Mercury stations retrograde at 8 degrees of Libra, making some pretty significant aspects. So first, it is in a trine to Mars. So it's working harmoniously with the planet of action, drive, motivation, who will not station retrograde until after Mercury has finished its retrograde. So it's actually in the business of taking action. It's feeling motivated. It's in its shadow period, so it's already in that area where it's going to trek 3 times. So it's already feeling the retrograde energy, but they're working together. I look at this as kind of like a baton race. Mercury is going to be doing this work to get the message clear, coming in from the super galactic center, and then it's going to pass the baton. And Mars is going to do a lot of work of reconfiguring where the actions need to be taken, right? But it's working harmoniously with Mars. It's also working well with the asteroid Pandora, which has a lot to do with like going into the unknown, working through a lot of... so the Pandora mythology is pretty interesting, right? We look at the Pandora kind of like Eve, like, oh no, she ate the apple and let the horrors out, or she opened the box and now the world sucks. But in the legend, yeah, she opened the box and let out all of life's horrors. But all of life's horrors were sitting on top of hope. Hope was at the bottom of the box. She freaked out, she closed the box and trapped hope in there. And it's stuck until one of us will venture through all of life's horrors, integrating and alchemizing until we finally make our way back to that box and open it and let back in the hope. And so it's really working harmoniously with this path back to hope and the actions that need to be taken on our quest, ultimately. Mercury is also stationing retrograde conjunct the asteroid Psyche. So Psyche has a lot to do with the alchemizing of deep psychic wounds and also the path to ultimate immortality. Psyche in Latin means soul, and the Psyche mythology has a lot to do with like tragic love stories. So the fact that it's in Libra can very much be playing out through our relationship dynamics. This Mercury retrograde is going to be in Libra, the sign of partnerships and relationships and marriage. So we're definitely going to be seeing it play out. Our communication when it comes to our loved ones is not going to be clear. Keep that in mind. But Psyche was the first human in Greek mythology to ever ascend to godhood. She was a regular ass human who had a bunch of trials and tribulations because Aphrodite pretty much hated her, the goddess of love, and like made her life a living hell. And so many things happened. I can't really get into it all right now or be here forever. But ultimately through like devoting herself to the goddess of the moon and going deep into her own psyche in the woods and all of these initiatory trials, she ultimately was granted godhood, and she was the first human to ever ascend to Mount Olympus and obtain immortality. And she did so through traversing the depths of her psyche, which was ultimately the depths of her soul. And so this Mercury retrograde is not only going to be transiting over the super galactic center, that super cosmic mind, but also the depths of our psyche. So you would think of a black hole as the realm of the unconscious because it's a darkness, right? That, to me, that's archetypally inaccurate. I look at black holes as advanced, evolved suns, because every black hole, it was not a void first. It's not the void. It's not darkness. It was a sun. And the supergalactic center, M87, was one of the first suns to originate after the Big Bang. It's one of the oldest, believed to have been one of the oldest suns in the universe. And it was massive, and it lived out its entire existence as a star or a sun. It went supernova, pierced the fabric of space-time, went on to something else entirely, and now a shit ton of galaxies rotate around it. It's a more advanced consciousness. It is consciousness. It's more, to me, I would say more connected to the realm of light and consciousness and the mind, but on its way back home to the void, where it has merged with where it came and become not polarized but unified with the cosmic womb. So it is one with it, right? So we have this Mercury retrograde, the planet of our mind, transiting not only over this cosmic mind, but also this asteroid that governs our deep psychological wounds and the recesses of our psyche. And remember, this is all happening in Libra, and so this is really going to be bubbling up in our relationships. And look to see what house Libra governs for you, because it'll also be playing out there as well. For example, Libra for me governs my second house, which has a lot to do with like finances and things like that. So, I don't know. Not that my finances are ever like golden. Okay. So not only do we have these things happening, but we also have Mercury opposite Jupiter retrograde. And during its retrograde period, it will transit over Mercury retrograde. No, Mercury retrograde. Mercury stations retrograde in opposition to Jupiter retrograde is what I'm trying to say. Mercury and Jupiter are both the planets that govern our mind. They govern the polarities that govern the mind, right? Mercury governs Gemini and Virgo, but it governs our analytical learning mind, the forefront of our mind, while Jupiter governs our higher mind, our philosophical mind, our expansive mind. And they're in an opposition at the time that Mercury stations retrograde. And it's happening in Libra, an air sign. This retrograde is going to be very heady. It is going to be a very heady retrograde where we are going to have to try to find ways to actually go inward, to do the work that retrogrades demand of us. We're going to want to be in our headspace. We're going to want to be overly analytical. The sun will still be in Virgo at this time. We're going to want to overanalyze. We're going to want to overthink. And we're going to very much need to find a semblance of grounding in order to navigate this, and stay sane. Mercury will also be in opposition to Chiron. And so a lot of which is also retrograde, so they're doing a lot of internal work. And so all of these retrogrades are working together. This is what the Mercury needs to integrate, right? So whenever we have an opposition, the planet is working to integrate what is on the opposite side. They're working harmoniously. So this Mercury retrograde is trying to fine-tune a message here in the realm of others, right? But in order to get this message in the realm of others, we have to integrate this work that's going on in the realm of the self. Jupiter is reassessing and doing a lot of internal growth and restructuring of belief systems, and Chiron is doing a lot of healing of traumatic wounds and unlocking of wisdom. And so we've done a lot of work here already during this retrograde cycle, and what we've done here we need in order to navigate this one properly. We have to look at these areas of our life and see how they are affected by one another. They are part of this polarity, the polarity of the self and the polarity of others, right? So Mercury also stations retrograde in a square, which is like a triggering aspect that forces us to take action. It's not necessarily bad. And I think this one's actually good. It's in a square to Hecate, the goddess of magic and witchcraft and sovereignty, the goddess that represents the three faces of the divine feminine, who helps us to take back our power and light our torches in the underworld so we can see and reclaim what's ours. And also in a square to Lilith, that which we're trying to reclaim while down in the underworld. And so these triggers are coming from the realm of the unconscious and also the realm of magic. And so taking action on these fronts will be paramount in receiving the message that Mercury is trying to deliver to us, and make sure we get this time over this little trek where it goes back and forth 3 times. When Mercury stations direct on the 2nd, let's just go there really quick because we're just going to talk about Mercury and then we'll move on. So when Mercury stations direct on October 2nd, it will be at 24 degrees of Virgo. And these aspects are also significant, right? Because this is the end of the story before he then treks on. This is a part of what Mercury is trying to bring forth for us. So it's going to be a lot of confusion and also a lot of shattered illusion. Okay, so Mercury will be stationing retrograde in opposition, almost exact opposition to Neptune. Both the Sun and Mercury will oppose Neptune this month. The little song lyrics that I had on the cover, like the thumbnail, and it says, open your eyes, see the lies right in front of you. Those are lyrics from a Lords of the New Church song. They're like a punk band from the late 70s, early 80s. And that lyric has been playing in my head over and over again. And I was like, okay, this is the perfect mantra for this month. Neptune is the planet that governs illusions, delusions, the spell, mystic truths as well, but a lot of confusionary fog and illusion. But when Neptune is retrograde, illusions are shattering. Mercury is also retrograde because it's reassessing the message. And a lot of this message has to do with the spell. It has to do with the lies right in front of you, right? And Mercury retrograde makes you open your eyes and see the illusion that you've been surrounded by. Whenever Neptune is retrograde, I always say it's like we take off our rose-colored glasses and we can see just a little bit more clearly of what is real, what is true, a little bit more of the illusion breaks away. And depending on where Neptune is will depend on what illusion we're talking about, right? Let's say Neptune was over here in Libra. It would be illusions around relationships. Let's say it was in Capricorn. It would have to do with more of the system, of the world stage, right? Well, it's in its home sign of Pisces. And so this illusion is innately spiritual. This is the spiritual realm. This is the realm of illusions and mystic truths. And if we're unwilling to let the illusions shatter and welcome rock bottom of the unknown and admit that maybe we don't know everything, and let Mercury show us that we missed some sort of message, and let Neptune show us how weird and batshit crazy everything is, and how we really are in some sort of Alice in Wonderland spell type narrative, which this transit right here, that's what this is. The September into October, and particularly these oppositions to Neptune, are going to feel like you are in the fucking Twilight Zone. It's going to feel like nothing makes sense. But that's because what we thought made sense was an illusion, and the illusion is now breaking away, and we're able to see the lies that are right in front of us that we missed before. And that is what this Mercury retrograde is really helping us to focus on. And then we'll be forced to transform. So while Mercury will station direct in opposition to Neptune, the lies that and the truth that is right in front of us, it will be in a trine to Pluto retrograde, the planet that transforms, the planet that helps us to be reborn, the planet that transmutes, the planet that helps us transition onto something else, helps us alchemize, helps us internalize, helps us unlock the realm of the mysteries. We'll be working harmoniously with Mercury at that time. So we're going to see something, and because of what we see, we're going to be forced to transform, right? It'll also be working harmoniously in a trine with the path forward that we're taking, this north node that we're trekking, the Uranus that's breaking us free and setting us on this new trajectory. This Mercury retrograde, like, don't let people tell you that it's here to fuck you up. It's transiting over the super galactic center. I mean, okay, it is all up on my chart, you guys. It is going to station retrograde on my Venus. It's going to transit over my Sun. It's going to transit all the way back to my Mars. It's going to station direct on my Mars, and then it's going to go all over it again. Like, it's super on my chart. Like, I hope I make all the videos that I scheduled this month. I hope I do all of the things, but God only knows what this is going to do to me. But I know that whatever it does, it is rooted in fate. It's rooted in destiny. It's rooted in awakening. It's rooted in the unlocking of the mysteries. It's rooted in transmutation. It's rooted in taking action, and action that's aligned with, okay, that's what I had written on here on the thing. And we'll touch on this more when we get to the cards, but it's rooted in taking action, but action that helps inspire others because of the Libra connection. So I wrote here, how can I inspire transformative visions that spur others and myself into action? And that's what I think this Mercury retrograde is really going to zero in on for us. Okay, so I just wanted to lean into the retrograde. It's like the key thing this month. Let me get rid of all these aspect lines because this is just too much. Okay. Is there anything else I wanted to say about Mercury retrograde? No. But I do just want to note that when Mars stations retrograde near Halloween next month, we'll of course talk about it then, it's going to be right on the axis Mundi. So this whole month is preparing us for really big initiations throughout next month, which is going to be eclipse season. It's going to be Mars retrograde on top of the axis Mundi, helping us to take action, to come into alignment within the self. Find that sort of middle ground, find that sort of balance between extremes that this time of year represents, this equinox, this equinox, right? We have to go inward in order to find the equilibrium. Okay, so we'll continue on. Okay, this is October 2nd. How do we get all the way over here? Okay, so on the 10th, the Pisces moon is exact. We are not going to talk about it too much here tonight, but we're going to meet tomorrow on on Patreon, and we're going to dive in, right? I want to just kind of point out a couple of things. The moon falls at 17 degrees. I'm not going to make it exact. It's at a different time. The moon falls at 17 degrees of Pisces, opposite the sun at 17 degrees of Virgo. It falls in a sextile to the North Node. in a trine to the south node, so working harmoniously with our nodes of fate and destiny, preparing us for eclipse season and the big changes that it will bring next month. It is very close to Neptune, and it's working harmoniously with these portal points, right? The past and where we're going. It is an illumination in the depths of the abyss. Pisces governs the Akashic realm. It's the last sign of the zodiac. It's where everything merges back with the whole. And so we have all of the truth, all of the lie, and everything in between, all merged into one. Looking to see where Pisces falls in your chart will help you to understand where you manifest this energy, but we are going to be having a huge culmination and illumination in this house. For me, it's my 7th house of relationships, but for you, it'll probably be somewhere else, unless you happen to be a Virgo rising, and then it will be your 7th house of relationships. But we're going to be able to see, and we're going to be able to see into an area that is very hard to normally see, because Pisces literally governs the unseeable. It governs the hidden. It governs the etheric. It governs the intangible. It governs that which we can't see or explain or fully understand. But when we have a full moon in that sign, we have a huge illumination, and we're able to see and harvest and integrate something from that area. And then we're also going to be asked to release and start to let go and transmute and integrate stuff from that same area. So it's going to be a peak and then a release. And we're, like I said, we're going to dive super into it tomorrow, so we're not going to get into it now. But on that same day, Neptune and Diana will be exactly conjunct as well. Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, the ruler of dreams, of mysticism, of the archetypal realm, of the unconscious, of the spell, of the illusion, of the mystic truths, will be conjunct Diana, which is the goddess of the moon, of our lunar innate psychic senses. And so part of the illusion that's shattering is revolving around this sort of lunar parts of our psyche, these innate feminine parts of our psyche that are often forgotten but holds the most primordial essence of divinity. Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, so on the 11th, the sun will come into an exact trine with Uranus retrograde. Uranus is the planet of liberation, freedom, rebellion, that like futuristic genius mind of like insights and downloads and brilliant, innovative paths forward, right? And it will be coming into a trine with the sun. And so if you are feeling extra brilliant around that time, maybe it will be more expressed internally. Lean into it, because this brilliance is here to show you this new path forward that you're supposed to be developing right now while the nodes transit through Taurus and Scorpio. We're starting a huge chapter here, and it's a hard one. Wherever the North Node is, it's what I call the pathless path. We have not gone this way before, and so every step is a step into the unknown. But Uranus really helps us to push forward and liberate ourselves, and break the chains that bind us in order to step more fully into our fated, destined mission. On this day, on the 11th, Venus will also come into an exact alignment with Draco. Draco is Alpha Draconis. Thuban, the main star in Draco the Dragon. It used to be one of the pole stars. And now Polaris is the pole star. Hold on. Oh no, way too close to my books. That water. So this Mercury retrograde is already going to dig up relationship dynamics and communication mishaps, and that whole realm is going to be a focus, right? Well, Venus, the planet that rules Libra, that rules relationships, on the 11th will be coming into alignment with Draco, and that has a similar energy. Draco triggers our shadow, that which we project onto others, that which we reject within ourselves, and all of our untapped potential, untapped magic, our Kundalini life force. And so all of these things are going to be bubbling up from the surface. We'll have opportunity to activate more of that like Kundalini fire, but we live in a realm of duality. It will come for free. We're also going to be shown a lot of things that, maybe we are unaware of or pretended to be unaware of, and forced to work through said things in order to obtain said activations. It's going to be a lot of work throughout the month in this realm of our existence, our interactions with other people, ultimately. Okay, on the 13th, the Mercury retrograde, it'll be later in the day. Sometime later in the day, Mercury retrograde will come into a conjunction with Psyche. So it'll make a conjunction with Psyche, and later it will make its conjunction with the super galactic center. So remember, I said Psyche represents that harsh path of initiation, trials and tribulations, but the ultimate path up the mountain of Olympus to immortality and godhood, right? But through the traversing of the psyche. So pay attention to what comes through on the 13th, because Mercury retrograde, which literally governs our psyche, our like analytical psyche, Mercury does, will be coming into alignment with the asteroid psyche. And so some sort of clarity when it comes to these deep psychic wounds might be able to come through around that time, especially if you set intentions for like answers, right? In like right now, you could even do that. You can think, okay, so I know on the 13th, Mercury is going to be coming into alignment with Psyche before it prepares for this big oomph boost it's going to get from the super galactic center. And I have an opportunity to have a message relayed to the forefront of my psyche from the depths of my psyche. What do I want insight on? What do I want clarification on? You can leave it open for, the divine, which is just you, to show you what you need to see, or you can try to navigate it towards a specific end, whatever it may be. But opening up the intention now to allow for those messages to come through. The universe works intent, right? We don't have to overthink this. Just kind of knowing that this is going to be happening helps it to manifest in your reality. On that same day, the moon will be transiting over the Andromeda galaxy. So Mercury will be going into the depths of our psyche, and our nearest psychic body that really governs our intuition and our innate psychic senses, those lunar senses that, our intuition, our gut instinct, will be transiting over the Andromeda galaxy, which, we have Libra is the sign that governs relationships, right? Its ruling planet, Venus, is the planet that governs relationships. So we have the planetary body, we have the constellational body, and then we have the galactic body that I consider governs relationships, and that is Andromeda. So the center of the Andromeda galaxy, the black hole of the Andromeda galaxy, is at 27 degrees of Aries, and the moon will be transiting it at the same time that Mercury transits through here. The Milky Way galaxy and the Andromeda galaxy are shooting towards each other in space, and they're going to collide and create a third galaxy. One of the other things I had written on the thumbnail was this concept of duality versus trinity, and the concept of the two sides, so like light, dark, yin, yang, masculine, feminine, but then the scale, which sits independent from those two sides and is what balances the two sides. The scale is the third, right? We always need a third thing in order to make balance, in order to make union. The two will always be opposing. There'll always be a polarity. We need a third in order to make a trinity, in order to make unity. Libra, the scales, is that third. It's the third. It's the only one of the signs that is an inanimate object. And it is the third that sits independent from the light and dark and is responsible for balancing said light and dark. Well, Andromeda represents the making of the third, right? So we have the Andromeda galaxy and the Milky Way galaxy, 1 and 1. I look at Andromeda as the divine feminine and the Milky Way as the divine masculine. They're shooting towards each other in space and are going to collide in 4.5 billion years, merge. Their black holes are going to literally merge into each other, and they are going to create a super galaxy, a third, something beyond the masculine, something beyond the feminine, but a third entity. And when we're in Libra season, we're in this sort of like a realm of the third entity. I know Libra represents the other, but really it represents the apparatus that balances the self and the other, or the light and the dark, or the yin and the yang. It sits outside of time and space ultimately, and is that third sort of entity that makes the trinity, if that makes sense. But that was one of the things that I did want to kind of touch on, and I'm glad that was a good time to interject it. Okay. I have like a whole bunch of random notes, you guys. Okay, where was I at? September 13th. Okay, so the Andromeda galaxy. And so the Andromeda galaxy represents relationships galactically, union, right? Libra represents relationships celestially in the constellations, and Venus represents relationships in the planetary sphere, and they all are going to be lit up throughout this entire month. And so the dynamic playing out throughout the month is really like the battleground. I hate to use the word battleground, but like the setting for this archetypal dance. There, that's better. That sounds nicer. The setting for this archetypal dance is definitely the realm of our interactions with other people, and how instead of being an us versus them, we can work to coalesce to create a third sort of compromised entity, if that makes sense, where we have merged the two opposing forces together into something that sits beyond duality. Which is something we feel briefly at our periods of equinox or equinox, when we have this peak, this brief sort of balance between extremes, and it doesn't last very long, but it can very much be harnessed in ritualistic ways in order to align with that within. Okay, so on the 14th, we're going to dive into that book over on YouTube. On the 15th, Chiron will conjunct the asteroid Sphinx, both of which are retrograde in the sign of the Self. So this is an ideal time to access the riddle, or that which is kind of standing in the way of the healing that needs to be done, or the riddle that leads you to the healing that needs to be done, that maybe you were unaware of even existed. Because is responsible for our healing and our unlocking of the wisdom, right? On the other side of the pain. It takes the venom and the poison and it turns it into medicine. And the Sphinx is that enigma, that paradox, that guardian of the mystery, that riddle, that illusion that's rooted in truth, but you have to kind of understand the level, and it is not as it seems. And so on the 15th would be a really great time to unlock some of the mysteries in regards to the healing that needs to be done deep within the recesses of ourself. Chiron has been here for a really long time, you guys. You've heard me talk about Chiron and Aries a million times. And the healing that's being done in the deep recesses of our animalistic, reptilian part of our psyche, the fight, the flight, the area that fights for what we believe in, the anger, the aggression, the rage, the wounds of identity, the wounds of the self. These are all things bubbling up through Chiron's track through Aries. And this conjunction with the Sphinx on this day, most people aren't even going to know that this is here because most people don't use this asteroid. These unconscious asteroids are so powerful. Oh my gosh. They blow my mind on a daily basis. And this would be a really great time to work intentionally with the Sphinx archetype to unlock that which it is guarding for you. Looking to see what house Aries governs will help you to understand that. For me, it's my 8th house of death, rebirth, transformation, the occult, astrology, projections, the mysteries, that which is hidden or taboo. For you, it's going to probably be somewhere else, but knowing where that is will help you to kind of understand where this riddle is manifesting for you. Okay. On the 16th, it's only 11. We're doing pretty good. Okay. On the 16th, Venus will come into a square with Mars. So this is just another way that the relationship dynamic is playing out this month. So we'll have Mercury retrograde in the sign of relationships and the planet of relationships coming. Both Venus and Mars govern relationships. Mars governs our passions and our attraction. Our Venus also governs our attraction as well, and our values. And they're going to be in a square. So they're going to be at a 90-degree angle where they have these sort of conflicting, triggering desires that are not necessarily on the same page and will force us to make and take some sort of action. But just to know that the message is not coming through clearly. So to be mindful in the action taking that you make during this time, but the dynamic between us and others is definitely tense all throughout the month. So definitely keep that in mind. The same day that Venus is in a square to Mars, really bringing that sort of like a triggering, conflicting, aggressive energy to our relationship dynamics, and also very heady signs, the same time that Mercury is retrograde in an also heady sign. The sun, that which we can see, our vitality, our egoic will, our consciousness, will be opposite Pluto retrograde. So much like the Mercury retrograde that we will have in opposition to Neptune in the beginning of October, the sun opposing Neptune has a very similar energy. You're looking out at a twilight zone and you're like, what the actual fuck is this? Nothing makes any sense. But simultaneously, things are becoming clear because the illusion is shattering all around you. And like the little song lyrics, open your eyes, see the lies right in front of you. Like, they are going to be right fucking there. And a lot of the collective is going to be doubling down on those lies and falling into denial and escapism and delusions, all things ruled by Pisces and Neptune, while other of us are going to be welcoming in the shattering of what we thought was true in order to then embody what is actually more aligned with truth. And the 16th is going to be another one of those days where you're just going to be like, what the fuck is going on? But just know that the same time that Mars and Venus are trining each other, and there's this sort of like conflict that's forcing us to take action that creates resolution. It creates harmony. The action is needed to be taken in order to find the compromise and the balance and the harmony. Venus will be in a trine to the North Node. So it's working harmoniously with this path that we are trekking forward for ourselves, this new story that we are writing for ourselves, this new path forward, this pathless path, this walk into the unknown. It's working harmoniously with the planet that governs our values, that governs our relationships. And so any sort of tension around this time is just forcing the proper action to be taken in order for the right path to be walked, and the ability for you to be in the right position to embody this like fated future that's unfolding for you right now. Okay. On the 17th, Mars is going to sextile Chiron, okay? I don't always talk about sextiles because they're not as felt as obviously like conjunctions, oppositions, squares, and trines are more easygoing, but the Mars is our planet of action. It's in Gemini right now, and it will be for almost 8 months. Because of its retrograde period, when it normally only spends about 2 months in a sign. So it is focusing in on whatever house Gemini rules in your chart. For me, it's my 10th house of career and purpose. Like, I know once it stations retrograde, I'm going to have like zero motivation. Probably consider quitting everything altogether. But it'll station directs and everything will be fine. So look and see where Gemini falls for you, because this is really going to be the focus over the next several months. On the 17th, Mars will come into a sextile, a harmonious aspect that requires effort on our end to seek the actual benefit. With Chiron retrograde, the planet that is doing a lot of healing of the self, which we talked about earlier. So Mars, the planet that is our motivation, that planet that helps us take action right now, it's being forced to take some sort of action in regards to our relationship dynamics. It's working harmoniously with all the healing that we've been doing. So if we lean into the healing we've been doing, we'll take the proper actions in regards to our relationships, and the message will come through clearly on the work that we're currently doing. And so really leaning into the work that we've done on the self over this long Chiron transit will help give you the information that you need to take the proper action, and not just combust in the flames of conflict and tension and crossed wires, which of course we will be feeling, but all of that forces us to go inward, which is all the retrogrades want us to do. Go inward, reassess. The only place we can get the message is deep within the self right now, which is, like I said, going to be hard to do, especially once the sun enters into Libra, because it enters into the realm of the world and the realm of others. And so we will have to consciously focus on going inward and reflecting, because the world is going to want to pull us in a million other directions. Okay. On the 18th, Mercury retrograde will oppose Jupiter retrograde. Mercury, right before it will conjunct the supergalactic center in a couple of days, like 3 days after that. So Mercury retrograde will be opposite Jupiter retrograde. Like I said before, both these planets govern our mind. Jupiter is actually the higher octave of Mercury. Mercury governs the analytical thinking mind. Jupiter governs the higher philosophic mind. And the two of them will be in opposition to each other and highlighting our areas of self and relationships, and the inner work that is being done to reassess the message and the information given and the belief and dogmatic structures we've built around ourselves in order to grow, in order to learn. This opposition on the 18th is happening the same time that the sun is trining Pluto retrograde. Okay, so Sun Pluto transits. I have strong Pluto transits and strong Pluto aspects in my chart. The sun trining Pluto retrograde is the most, not the most, if it was conjunct it would be stronger, but it is a very penetrating energy, helping to dig down to the depths of something. Think of it as like the detective, like on the fucking case, going in to the depths to figure out what's out down there and being able to actually see in the depths, but even deeper depths, because Pluto is retrograde, so it's going into the self in order to see deep what's in there, as opposed to like going into some outside mystery, you know, like I tend to do all the time. This is really going into the mystery that is the self and being able to pierce through and see deep into the underworld. So the same day that Mercury retrograde opposes Jupiter retrograde, the mind, our forefront and our expansive mind in opposition, both retrograde, both going internal, both reassessing, both reconfiguring and learning and growing. Our sun is piercing into the depths of our underworld in order to see what's in there. The 18th is a day for aha moments. Circle that on the calendar, come back around to that, but also know, like, whatever aha moment you have on that day, it'll be part of the story. The rest of the story you're not going to fully understand until after the retrograde's over, but it's going to be the first big clue. Like the detective is going to start to crack the case around that time. And the moon will be transiting Hecate on that day, and so that goddess of sovereignty and magic and witchcraft and the reclaiming of your innate power from those who try to take it from you will also be working harmoniously with our lunar intuitive psychic body on that day. Okay, so on the 19th, Venus, that planet of relationships, values, money, whatnot, beauty, art, creativity, will be in a trine to Uranus retrograde. So Uranus liberates us. It breaks us free. We have a lot of relationship stuff happening here. This retrograde, if relationships are not like where you're supposed to be, like fate is involved in a lot of these decisions making too. If the relationships that you have built around you are not aligned with your organic and fated path forward, particularly the Venus trine to Uranus retrograde, this can be a breaking free, this can be a liberation. Mercury will be retrograde, so usually relationships that break up during Mercury retrograde, they end up getting back together. So if it seems like, and relationships that start during Mercury retrograde are always like breaking up and coming back around, it's like a fucking nightmare, right? Because we're always redoing, reassessing. So definitely don't make any sudden decisions during Mercury retrograde about anything, because the message is not clear. If after the shadow period, if after he stations direct and we get into like mid-October and everything that came through becomes so clear, that would be the time to maybe make some sort of decisions on your new path forward and what you are going to be walking away from. But definitely be mindful during this time that the energy is volatile, that the message is not clear, and we are angsty and wanting to make abrupt, life-altering decisions that may not necessarily be in our best interests and may be more just triggered by impulses of Uranian impulses of wanting to break free and feel liberated, but perhaps we're supposed to break free from chains that bind us within the relationship dynamic in order to come more into a solidified union. So make sure you're not assuming what the message is and just welcoming the unknown, welcoming the illusion, welcoming the crossed wires, and know that Mercury is holding your hand through this sort of wonderland and walking you to a truth that you missed, that you cannot see right now. And it will take this sort of trek over this area in order to get the message clear. Okay, so on the 21st, that starts this 8-day Mabon, right, that the ancients celebrated. And throughout this time, that's those yellow boxes on the calendar, we have several significant things happening in the sky, right? On the 21st, it's the first day of Mabon. Mercury retrograde will conjunct the super galactic center on that day. So, like, whenever I see a planet transit over a black hole, I picture that archetypal expression getting this huge boost from this very strong logos, this very strong source of consciousness. Think of a picture of a black hole where you see that like jet stream of energy, of like gamma ray and electromagnetic energy just shooting from the center of that stream. I look at that as like this jet propulsion pack that's just like latched onto this archetypal expression. And Mercury is our mind. So our mind is just going to get a huge boost of super galactic wisdom and activations. And it's this sort of connection to this portal that sits beyond the time-space continuum. The way it's going to manifest is going to be different for all of us, but our mind, our very close analytical mind, is going to be plugged into that vast cosmic mind, even bigger than our own galactic center. It's the super galactic center. It's the galactic center's galactic center. It's our sun's sun. Because like our sun revolves around the galactic center, so it's its sun, and the galactic center revolves around that, so it's its sun. It's this vast cosmic mind. Pay attention to whatever comes through on the 21st. It may not be anything physical, it may just be energetic. And so if you are being called to rest, like look at all these retrograde planets. Like we are being called to, I'm say this as I'm looking at my calendar for the month, and I have like so many sessions. Oh my gosh, but I have it scheduled pretty good where I think I'll be fine. But we are being called to rest. We are being called to go inward because that's the only place we're going to be able to find the message. But so much is coming through the vastness of our cosmic realm into the personal psychic planet of Mercury, which is one of the closest ones. It's the closest one to our sun. It's our most personal planet. Okay, on the 22nd is the equinox. The sun enters Libra officially, preparing for its conjunction to the supergalactic center. And on that same day, Mercury will conjunct the sun. So when Mercury conjuncts the sun, especially when it's retrograde, that's when we can really see what this is about. Okay, what this whole was about was when we get another one of those clues that we got before when the sun trined Pluto. This is when we get another one of those clues and we're able to see when our vitality aligns with our consciousness, we're able to get the message, right? Mercury is the messenger of the gods. Mercury is relaying the message to the sun, which is our identity, our self, right? And this is when it comes through. This is when it comes through. And then from there, we'll be working on integrating what we saw. And through the trek back over is when we really start to pick up and understand, okay, that's what this lesson was about. Okay, that's what this period was about. On that day of the equinox, on September 22nd, the day of the equinox, when the sun enters Libra, Mercury conjuncts the sun, the moon transits over the asteroid Persephone and Lilith, of course. Persephone's mythology is tied to the equinoxes. At the autumn equinox, that's when she enters into the underworld, the dark half of the year. She then rises in the spring and spends that half of the year in the upper world. She spends half her year in the underworld and half her year in the upper world. And so it's interesting that the moon, our feminine expression of that yin energy, aligns with both Persephone and Lilith, which really represents that dark half of the year we're entering into on the 22nd. So Persephone enters the underworld with a pomegranate in hand, ready to welcome in the realm of the goddess and the quest of the unconscious that is before us, the 6 months of trekking the magic forest that is our subconscious, unconscious mind, right? And that realm of archetypal dynamics that we can't fully understand, but we know is more true than anything we actually do understand. All right, so on the 23rd, Mercury retrograde re-enters Virgo. Okay, so after being in Libra, it enters Virgo, and so then things get practical, right? So when the Mercury conjunct the sun back on the 22nd, that's when I said we got another one of those puzzles. We got another one of the clues. We're like, okay, I see what this is about. The 22nd, Mercury conjuncts the sun. Then once Mercury enters into its home sign of Virgo, where it actually likes to be, it's like, okay, I have seen the details, which Virgo loves. Now I need to reassess the situation. I need to go inward, and I need to think practical, and I need to think organizational, and I need to start to map out a new trajectory and a new plan of action, right? Virgo helps us make the plans. And so over this time, we're going to be reassessing the details, ultimately. The details that we've been picking up piece by piece, like breadcrumbs, as Mercury goes through its retrograde cycle. Once Mercury enters its home sign of Virgo, that's when we can start to piece the puzzle pieces together. It's literally Virgo's job to take the details. Sometimes she has a hard time taking the details and actually piecing them together into the bigger picture because she obsesses on the details and she misses the bigger picture. So be mindful of that. And if you find yourself obsessing on the details, remember that there's a bigger picture, and to try to expand your perspective out to embody that. Okay, on the 24th, Venus will oppose Neptune retrograde. So we had Mercury. Well, Mercury will do it in October. Mercury retrograde will do it in October. We had the Sun oppose Neptune, and now we have Venus oppose Neptune. Again, it's going to feel like you are in the motherfucking Twilight Zone, being as though it's Venus. You're going to be like, are we even the same species? Are we even speaking the same language? Are we in the same reality? And the answer is no, we aren't. We aren't. People are living in completely different realities, and this month and all of these oppositions to Neptune retrograde is going to make us see just how painfully clear that is, and how thick some of these rose-colored glasses are, and just how delusional a lot of these narratives are. And being as though Venus and Libra are so involved, the dynamic is very much going to be playing out in our interactions with those closest to us, the relationships that we have with other people. Okay, on the 25th is our Libra new moon, which is conjunct the super galactic center. We are going to obviously be diving very deep into this over on Patreon. I just want to touch on a brief bit of the aspects made to that moon. So not only is it literally a new moon, meaning both the sun and the moon are conjunct with the supergalactic center. So the supergalactic center falls at our equinox points. It falls at our point of balance between light and dark, yin and yang. So it itself represents balance. Libra, the sign it's in, the scales also represent balance. Plus, it has both the sun and moon, the things that are sitting in the sides of the scales, there as well. All aligned. It is this new beginning when it comes to inner alchemy, balance, equilibrium, right? And it's in opposition to Jupiter retrograde. So what we have in opposition to particularly a new moon is what needs to be integrated in order for the seeds planted at that new moon to fully manifest and harvest, right? So what needs to be integrated, what's sitting in opposition, what's opposing is this restructuring of our dogmatic belief systems, our philosophical ideals, and that which we believe, which right now our illusions are shattering, and so are our belief systems. And so we're being forced to reconfigure our understanding of reality. And that is what we will have to do in order to really be able to embody this new chapter of balance and harmony and equilibrium within the self. But if we can do that, the seeds that are planted during that moon are just astronomical. Have such opportunity for balance between extremes, for connection to this vast cosmic mind, for propelling us forward, for unlocking that which sits beyond time and space and duality. At the same time as that moon, Venus, the planet of relationships, will be in a harmonious trine with Pluto, the planet that transforms, the planet that alchemizes, the planet that pierces through the bullshit, the planet that makes us die so that we can be reborn, the planet that helps us access actual esoteric truths that sit on the other side of the veil, right? And so the planet of relationships will be working harmoniously with that. After this month of a lot of harsh work in that area, the intentions that are set during the Libra moon are working harmoniously with the planet that helps us transform ourselves and our relationships into something more alchemical, into something more aligned, into a phoenix, ultimately. Okay. On the 26th, Venus will... So the 26th and the 27th are technically the equinox, if you happen to live near the 33rd degree northern latitude line, which runs through like Los Angeles and Arizona and whatnot. I mean, it runs through the whole world. So we have this sort of period. So the 25th is the new moon in Libra, the sign of balance. aligned with the black hole that represents balance, aligned with the sun and moon on both sides of the scales that represent balance. And then the next 2 days after the moon are considered the days of balance, at least on my latitude. It's considered the equinox. And so really harnessing that on the days that follow the new moon, you can really channel in a lot of that equilibrium, that archetypal equilibrium over the days that follow the new moon. Venus will conjunct Mercury retrograde on the 26th, and the sun will oppose Jupiter retrograde. So Venus conjunct Mercury retrograde on the 26th. Like, do not try to have any important conversations with anybody. Nobody is going to be able to fucking hear you. Everybody is going to be on a different page. The message is not going to be clear at all. Just don't do it. Just don't try to have any sort of important conversations during that time. The sun opposite Jupiter retrograde, however, will really help us to have a sort of like peak culmination and aha moment when it comes to these restructuring belief systems that's happening right now in Aries, in the sign of the self. Jupiter has only been in Aries for a little while, and then he's stationed retrograde, and now he's going to go back into Pisces. So we're having this like tail end of Jupiter in Aries where it's like, okay, what can you integrate on this expansive work that you've done on the self? Aries governs the pioneering self, and Jupiter governs our expansion. It also governs the belief systems that hijack us and hold us captive in dogma so that we can't expand. And so right now we're really breaking free from a lot of these systems in order to actually embody real internal expansion. Okay. On the 27th, Mercury retrograde will trine Pluto retrograde, and Mars will trine Saturn retrograde. Okay. Mercury retrograde will trine Pluto retrograde. Okay, I have Mercury conjunct Pluto in my chart. This is why I can pierce through into things and just see deep into things that people probably have no business going that deep into, but I guess it's just kind of my jam. I don't really know. I can't control it. But Mercury trine Pluto is a very similar energy. It is penetrating. It is penetrating into the mind, particularly, in order to see. Both are retrograde. And so what we will be seeing is a lot about what these retrograde stories is about, the transformations that need to take place, the messages that are coming through, the information that we got wrong and now we're starting to get right? This is another day that is very penetrating and piercing forward. And so if you have some sort of like aha during that day, these are one of the ones that you can start to trust. This is another one of those clues that are coming through of clarity in order to see. While we're in this midst of illusion and having all these oppositions to Neptune, this really does start to help us see. Mercury is actually opposite Neptune at this time. So our mind is in opposition to the spell, to the illusion, but it's trining the planet that helps us pierce through the fog and see the truth at the bottom of the rabbit hole. Ultimately, Pluto literally governs the navigating of the rabbit hole. So the 27th is a day to fucking see. And it also happens to be the equinox around here. Now, Mars trine Saturn retrograde on that same day is also very interesting because Mars is that planet of action, of drive, of motivation, and Saturn is that karmic planet of harsh confrontations with reality, harsh lessons and hard work, are sort of just the karmic duty that we have here, the soul work that we need to do, the really hard soul work that we need to do. And right now it's retrograde in Sagittarius. Many of you are probably going through your Saturn return who have Saturn in Aquarius. It's like the tail end of, your Saturn return will end in next year in 2023. You know what I mean? You're over a kind of little hump here. And it's retrograde. And so it's this sort of like focus, like, okay, let's zero in on this area and let's sort of get some of this message through in regards to responsibility, in regards to personal authority, in regards to, the karmic work that your soul came here to do in service to the vast collective, because it's in Aquarius, right? And Mars, being the planet of action and drive, will help us to kind of lean into any sort of actions that we may need to take on the front that Saturn is working on. On the 29th, it is my birthday, and I will be turning 35 years old. And that's exciting. So it's on your calendar. On that same day, Venus enters Libra, which is also it's my sun sign and my Venus sign. My Venus is there too, so it'll be the start of my Venus return. And it's also the last day of Mabon, that 8-day celebration of balance, and union and equilibrium, and the darkness and the light. The darkness being the divine mother, and the light being the son that she birthed, right? Venus in Libra. Okay, so Venus enters Libra on my birthday, but it's like later in the day. And this is where, our Venus in Virgo is very practical, very logical, very analytical, very focused on duties and responsibilities and routines. And once it moves into Libra, it is focused on companionship and partnership and mental stimulation. Libra is a air sign, so these are mental relationships that tickle our mind, as opposed to Scorpio relationships that tickle something else. The Libra relationships, they tickle our mind, our intellect, and this is when we will really be able to start to connect with our loved ones more. Mercury is going to be stationing direct in just a couple of days. Venus moving into Libra is really a breath of fresh air. It's its home sign. It really likes to be there. It too will transit the Galactic center later in October, and I always look at that as a huge heart expansion and just like boost to our relationship dynamic, whatever house this governs as well. Okay, Mercury stations direct on the 2nd of October. And yeah, that's the last thing I want to talk about in regards to the month. So the month really I have some cards I pulled too. So the month really revolves around this sort of, for lack of a better term, battlefield of our interactions with other people, as a mirror for being able to see what all this retrograde energy is wanting us to see deep within our own psyche, within our own self. And so the realm of others is going to be a huge mirror for us throughout this month, but also a huge trigger and also a huge distraction and opportunity to pull us out of the self and prevent us from doing the work that needs to be done within there. And so it's really going to be a lot about finding a harmonious balance, which Libra is all about as well. Okay, let me see if I said all the things I want to say here, because you guys know I always have random shit written. Oh, well, I did this like this so that I would be able to say, remember if I said all the things. Okay, yeah, so we're just, illusions are going to be shattering, but you literally need to open your eyes to see them. They're right in front of you, but a lot of people are not going to be opening their eyes. They're going to be putting like their rose-colored glasses on and like turning away. So expect to have the month feel like you're walking through an illusionary twilight zone. Chris Brennan, he runs the astrology podcast. He had a really good analogy. I am going to butcher this. Maybe you guys saw it. I posted it in my stories. He used this like antidote of, I guess somebody, like they got married, right? And they're like big Game of Thrones fans, apparently. I have never seen Game of Thrones. I was like waiting and waiting and waiting. I know it's like about stuff I like. And I was like waiting until it was going to be done. And I was like, I'll just binge it all when it's over. But then it had such a horrible ending and everybody hated the ending so much that now I'm like, I don't even know if I want to watch it. But anyway, people were getting married and their entire wedding was done in like High Valyrian, which is, I'm probably butchering that word, but apparently it's like the language from Game of Thrones. And like they all learned High Valyrian for this wedding. Even some of the guests learned some of it. And he said like, this is a really good analogy for what this Mercury retrograde and Mercury retrograde opposing Neptune retrograde, the Sun opposing Neptune retrograde, Venus opposing Neptune retrograde. It's a really good analogy for what that energy is going to be like. It's going to be like you're at a wedding where everybody is speaking a made-up language from a television show and acting like it's normal, and you're going to be like, what is going on here? It's just illusionary, rooted in fantasy, rooted in delusion and magic at the same time. And so it's I would say that the goal would be to embrace the madness. Like know that you are in a sort of like waking dream. I like to call it like the mirror realm or the wonderland. That realm of the Sphinx, of the riddle. You know, when we have Neptune transits, that's what we're in, you know? We're in this sort of realm of fantasy. We're in this sort of archetypal dream space, other world, etheric realm that has a lot of truths and also a lot of illusion, right? So open your eyes. The lies are right in front of you. You just have to welcome them in and see them. Mercury retrograde opposing Neptune, it's going to help you see them. The Sun opposing retrograde is going to help you see them. Both those things trining Pluto is going to help you pierce through the veil and see it, right? And this is a really good song. It's called Open Your Eyes. The Lords in the New Church, I really like that band, you guys. I recommend, if you're into like early punk. Miko says, we're all mad here from Alice in Wonderland. Like, exactly. Once you realize like it's all madness and you embrace the riddle, then you can like actually interact with the Sphinx and get to the other side of the illusion. But first you have to embrace it. Like, okay, Eddie always says this to our kids. I don't really remember my dreams, but Eddie can do a lot of like lucid dreaming. He always has since he was a kid, like flies in his dreams, does all kinds of weird shit. And he always tells our kids this too, because our kids have like really vivid dreams. And he's like, okay, so the key to being able to control your dreams is realizing that it is a dream, but not waking yourself up from it. So he says, like, once the dream gets so weird, that's when you start to realize, like, wait a second, this shit's fucking weird. Like, this has got to be a dream. And that's usually when people wake up. But if you don't wake up and you realize it's a dream and you stay in the dream, then you can control the dream. And then you have this sort of like co-creator aspect with your unconscious, right? And so this month is going to be us navigating our unconscious, but in the waking world. So we just have to realize it's a dream and then be lucid in the dream, right? Okay, so we talked about this, we talked about this, we talked about this. This is an initiation of balance. This is an initiation of alchemy. This is an initiation of union. We talked about this, we talked about this, we talked about this, we talked about this. We're about to talk about this when we get to the cards. Okay, we talked about all the things. Okay, so these are the cards I pulled. I'm going to go ahead and read them, and then we'll call it a night. And then I'll see you guys tomorrow, too, over on Patreon for the Pisces moon. We're going to dive into, like, the archetype of Pisces and, like, the historical, mythological connections to the sign of Pisces and its connection to the Akashic realm and the Akashic field, the cosmic womb, all that jazz. Okay, so I pulled an archetype card for the month, and I asked, what is the archetype that it will benefit us the most to embody throughout the month? And the card that came out was the Creator. So it says, the Creator, the artist, the alchemist, the innovator. Libra governs art, Venus governs art. And Libra, those scales, it really does govern the alchemical manifestation of balance, the union between 2 into 3, ultimately. The Creator is the first archetype in the trio of existence, is not intimidated by darkness or by lack. They know that from the void, creation inevitably emerges. And remember, we're entering into the dark half of the year. We're entering into the void, but that's all preparation for that which we will create. With meager, minimal, and outlandish materials, the Creator reveals a new image. They make the empty room resonate with healing sounds. They generate bounty from the seed that others tossed away. Though generative, this archetype alienates preconceived notions of what is possible, leaving unexpected openings in the wake of its destruction. The Creator does this by first being absolutely present to what is, not imagining or wishing things were different, and second, trusting that a force greater than themselves awaits constant collaboration with each human soul. I'm looking at that as the super galactic center this month. That force greater. It's greater than our sun, which represents our self, our identity. It's our cosmic self, right? I'm going to read that sentence one more time. The Creator does this first by being absolutely present to what is, not imagining or wishing that things were different, and second, trusting that a force greater than themselves, which is ultimately still themselves, because everything is within the self, awaits constant collaboration with each human soul, whether we call it nature, God, goddess, Shakti, or divinity. It remains nameless. It is the Creator's lifelong companion. To increase your Creator energy, ward off jadedness at all costs. Recommit to childlike curiosity and nix the rules. The Creator is naturally attractive and coveted. As the energy zings with possibility, you can feel when a Creator type enters the room. All eyes are on them. When this archetype is evolved, it is curious, playful, open, and surprising. But when it's in its lower archetype, it loses its spark and it feels burdened. And it says to go deeper, you can read Van Gogh's letters to his brother Theo. So then I pulled, so this is from the archetypes deck from the Wild Unknown. Then I pull another card from the Wild Harmonic Oracle to kind of see how. Okay, so we're supposed to be embodying the Creator archetype, but how can we best do this? And this card helps to speak to the how. So I love that it's the air of fire. Libra is an air sign. Its opposite sign, Aries, is fire. We have a lot of oppositions happening in those houses. It's particularly between Mars and Jupiter, right? And it says uplifting vision. So I'll go ahead and read this. This is how we can best embody the Creator throughout this month. Air of fire, uplifting vision. As the interconnected intelligence embodies into the fire of will, a feeding of the fires of inspiration gives lift to the wind. Meditation. Transformative visions, gallivanting initiations, rising energies, poetic insight, meaning, and the power to point the way. This is the stuff life paths are made of. Though visions may find me as they like, it is only if I have prepared myself to grasp them, digest them, and ground them, to bring them into embodiment, that I may discover their true gifts. Oh my God, that is so perfect for Mercury retrograde. I am going to read that again. Though visions may find me as they like, it is only if I have prepared myself to grasp them, digest them, and ground them, to bring them into embodiment, that I may discover their true gifts. I devote myself to being ready for this moment. My wings are full and strong so that when the warm winds rise, I can take to the skies and see the world from new heights. Each feather in my span is touched by the experience, and I bring this energy back home with me, wide open to seeing how it forever changes me and my world, right? Aries and Libra, me and my world, me and the others. Inquiry. How can I inspire forth a vision that will spur others and myself into action? All right, guys, that is all I have for you tonight. Let me go ahead and go over here and see you guys in the chat. We meet tomorrow over on Patreon. Like I said before, you guys can get access. Just literally pay whatever you want. I think you can even pay less than I might regret saying this, but I think you can even pay less than $3 and still get access to it, because there's an option to write your own price. And when I release the videos, I just release them to all Patreon members. So like, I don't know if this is true, but in theory, maybe you could even get it for less. I don't know. I'm just trying to make it available to as many people as possible. I know times are tough right now. So I appreciate all the support that you guys show me, and I want to kind of return the favor. I got this shirt for Eddie for his birthday, and then I stole it. This movie, The Dark Crystal, the Dark Crystal from 1982, and not The Age of Resistance on Netflix, which is a prequel. The movie from 1982 would be a fabulous movie to watch during Libra season, because it literally revolves around the taking of the two to unite them together into the three that is the two together. It's the whole archetypal story of that movie. If you have not seen this movie, I cannot recommend it enough. It's probably my favorite movie and was instrumental in my awakening, and you guys will probably hear me reference all the time. So maybe go watch it so you know what I'm talking about. Miko says, thank you for doing that. $3 has made it possible for me to keep supporting you every month. Oh, thank you so much, Miko. I really appreciate it. I get it, dude. I'm super broke. The only reason I even know how to do astrology is because I was too broke to ever hire an astrologer, and I wanted to know all the stuff, so I taught it to myself. I totally get it. So that's why I'm just trying to make it as easy for everybody as I can. And then, yeah, if you are a Patreon member and you need access to the Discord or anything like that, you can just message me on Patreon or on Instagram. But I have so many DMs over there, and I'm really, like, so bad at replying to them. You can email me. You can email me at thecosmicspaceWitch@gmail.com, and I'll get you a link over to there as well. Thank you guys for being here late with me, and I will see you tomorrow over on Patreon, and we will talk about Pisces. Have a good one.